race strategy is kind of like a video game. I have come up with some wacky strategies in my time. Valtteri was like, she would not shut up about racing for like the last 8 years. Like, I was also the reliability department. So that was like, I was doing wheel mileages as well as being the whole of the strategy department. And I definitely did not do a great job of those wheel mileages at 5 a.m. in the morning.
What's up, Vankers?
Hello, Vankers.
How is everybody doing?
How are you doing? Are you ready to fucking learn today? Are you ready to learn today? Listen, this podcast makes people stupider. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. You listen to the Red Flags podcast to get more stupider. But today, you're going to get a bit smarter. Because today, we have an aerospace, an aerothermal engineer, a former strategist for Ferrari. She got Seb Vettel his first win in the fucking red, was the head of strategy for Haas, head of strategy for Sauber, Alfa Romeo, and now, most importantly, the crowning achievement of her career. She is on the Red Flags podcast. We have Ruth Buscombe on the pod.
What an intro. Thank you.
We like to do it big. I mean, listen, when we have someone on the pod, when we started this thing, we were like, what the hell is even that? What the hell is even cars? We're both kids from New York. We don't care about cars, but we care about these like 140 pounds. That's right. Kilogram. They're these skinny, tiny, guys driving around this track and everything that goes into it, the fucking pit stops, the strategy, and there's like no one better. We've been dying to talk to you for a long time because we've seen you and we're just so thrilled that you're on the pod.
Excellent. Good. Well, I'm glad to be here, even if I don't know the pounds to kilogram conversion as well as you do.
Yeah.
So you've been on gardening leave. So what?
Yes.
What do you do? Like, you've been watching a lot of Netflix. Like, what does that involve for you?
Yeah, a lot of Netflix, a lot of seeing family members and friends that have forgotten what you look like because you have not seen them for the past 10 years. Yeah, a lot of family engagements, basically. I moved countries because I used to live in Switzerland, so a lot of boxes. But yeah, no, it's fairly standard in Formula One. So pretty much for everybody except the drivers, because that would be like a real downer if like Lewis leaves Mercedes and then he had a year off and you didn't see him till 2026. But you kind of end up with like
seems like he might be taking a year off right now, but that's okay.
Yeah. What are you? You said you're. What are you watching right now? Are you watching anything that on Netflix?
I think I watch like everything. I have like two distinct profiles. One of just like the girly stuff, and then one of like joint ones. You don't mess up the profile points of it. But yeah, no, I like a bit of everything really. Like I like your Love Is Blind reference.
I like that you're strategic with your Netflix, organization. You're already it bleeds into every aspect of your life. Because me, I'm like, it's all just one mess.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
No, you have to have the girl profile. That's
what's your girl profile called, and what's your general profile called?
Just yeah, it's really boring. But also I quite like horror and like death. So yeah, the family one. So yeah, it's basically either girly stuff or like money heist on my side of things, and then it's a lot more rounded as a profile on the other side of things. But yeah, I do like all the box films producing. So to be fair, I haven't seen this season of Drive to Survive, but I do like the tennis ones and the ones from the other sports.
Okay, so you're into reality shows?
A little bit, yeah. I like a Below Deck. We can go for a Below Deck.
Okay.
But
okay. I haven't gotten into Below Deck, but I do love a Love Is Blind. This last season.
Are you into Love Is Blind?
Yeah, I literally needed my EpiPen on my travel. I was like running in the gym when I was listening to your New York one where you made the reference to it, and it was a crossover I was not expecting.
Okay.
And in my I nearly fell off my my treadmill because I laughed so much at that about your
yes,
Bahrain comment.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a zone 2 as well. It wasn't even intervals, but yeah, I literally, and I think the other people in my gym must have thought I was crazy because I just started like laughing because like, it was completely boom blindsided by like, probably that's me stereotyping you. I didn't expect men like you to be able to make such an exquisite Formula One X Love is Blind crossover comment. So bravo, I learned something that day. I needed my EpiPen. I choked.
Get ready for more of them.
If you're going into Love is Blind, do you go in with a strategy?
What would I have done? I don't know. I don't think I would have done that, to be honest. I feel like
the strategy is not
I think
participating.
I just wouldn't have done it. No, I think watching. Yeah, no, I think I definitely wouldn't have done that.
Well, what's interesting, I find that interesting about that show, which is that like there are a lot of people who are very smart who go on that show. They're very like statistic smart. They're like, this is an experiment. They kind of enjoy the like experiment of it
the
all.
fishbowl
like
of it, yeah.
In the first season,
Yeah.
I think one of the guys was like, I mean, sometimes they just say that they're scientists, which is like, that's not, that's not,
Not a real job.
People have more specific. It's like in Good Will Hunting when he's like, oh, I was in a history class, and the guy goes, oh, I remember that class. It was right between recess and lunch. That's kind of the vibe of that. But because I guess we're going to get into your Formula One career. We're going to get into your life. But I guess something that we're interested is just like kind of, what does someone who your mind and the way that it works, like how does that find its way into like your daily life, in your daily interactions?
I'm unbearable. I use it all the time. Like,
okay,
even just like.
Yeah, an example.
There's too many embarrassing examples to even go through. Like I was on a hen do at the weekend, and instead of calling it a park run, I kept calling it a track run like multiple times, which is just embarrassing. I said DRS to overtake an 11-year-old child, which is just like, and the kid looked really sad when a bunch of girls dressed up as Taylor Swift ran past him as well. So it's but yeah, no, there's a lot of like it's difficult to kind of get yourself out of it because a lot of my friends and my partner is also kind of in the motorsport industry. So yeah, I think I'm stuck for life using copy like and like repeating things, using radio terms, which is just not great, but you can't get out of it. Like I remember going on holiday and like landing, it's this beautiful kind of like, like let's check what time sunset is, and I was like, just check the program. I was like, no, Ruth, we don't have a Formula One race program for this. This is a holiday. You don't need to get out like a pamphlet that's made for your thing. So yeah, I don't think it's a good trait that we all have, that we kind of use F1 speak, but it is unfortunate given that like it's the only job I've ever done. Like my internet security is terrible because my mother's maiden name is Smith and my first job was Ferrari, which is like the most guessable thing and available on Wikipedia. So like I have no other reference of like a real job of anything but Formula One, really.
Well, I think that's the realest job that there possibly could be.
So from my understanding is you went to become an engineer, and how did you fall into this F1 strategy game?
So I was a strange child. I liked sports.
Okay.
I, still watched a lot of sports growing up. I liked playing soccer, but was never quite good enough to make it in that. And then my dad was a big Formula One fan, so he was an old school McLaren fan for years and years and years. So that was like what was on the TV, and I was good at maths. So when I worked out I could do like sports and maths, and the guys that at the time, they were mostly guys, sat on the pit wall were engineers, and they were using like sports and maths live. That was it. And so when I was about 10, I decided that was what I was going to do. And then referencing the strange child, I got bullied a lot. So yeah, I know. I like worked out what all the team principals and like the technical directors did, and then just kind of copied them. Again, yes, I was a strange child. So like people like James Allison and Paddy Lowe, who used to be the technical director at McLaren when I was growing up, they all went to Cambridge and read engineering. So that's what I did. And then when I was there, I did my master's thesis with the FAA. So, the governing body of the F1, because they had like a collab with Cambridge with this guy called Tony Pennell, who used to be team principal of Red Bull before Christian. And then through that, I kind of got to know the teams, and I was headhunted by Ferrari. And that was how I got my job at Ferrari straight out of university. So I graduated, moved.
Two questions. What did you get bullied for? Being like a nerd? Or
Right.
was that why you got bullied?
Yeah.
Just being a
Yeah,
nerd?
East End of
Were you
London.
like
Yeah.
were you wheelie backpacking? Like what were your nerdy qualities that really like coded you as a nerd?
I think like all of them, like whatever you want, like your textbook, your like textbook.
So like if you watch Formula One with your dad, like you have this dream of doing this, but then like I guess the barrier beyond whatever social barriers is the fact, like, are you smart enough to do it? So I mean, like, was math, and I'm assuming what goes into that, the engineering degree, like your brain has to be enjoy working on these types of problems. My brain does not at all. Matt and I come from the fully creative side of things, where it's like, oh, like any like numbers, rules. Like once it got past algebra, I was like, I'm out. Like once it got to calculus and sine and the up and down, I was like, this is too much. I can't.
As soon as it gets to letters, you're like, damn, tapping out.
For me, it was like once we got to imaginary numbers, I was like, can I leave? Can I leave? We're in imaginary numbers now? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. You
loved it, yeah.
Beyond the socials thing was diving into that stuff. Was that like a respite for you? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I got moved up a year, so I was tiny as well, which also didn't help with the speed element of running away. But yes, I was always kind of always enjoyed maths. I always enjoyed like the kind of the problem solving element of it, which you then work out. That's really what engineering is. So it's like the applied maths rather than just kind of the abstract elements of it. And yeah, I think it's different strokes for different folks, isn't it, in terms of like what people enjoy. But I always just was just an incredibly stubborn, I'd say child, also adult human, and was just very much like, I'm gonna do all these extra exams. Again, you can see now why I got bullied, right? It's all clicking into place. Think Hermione Granger, but like not as fit as
I mean, Jesus, you really know how to cut yourself. So wait a minute. So it sounds like from your degree, it sounds like you could have gone into like the Adrian Newey side of things. What made you decide, like, you know what, I want to just work on pit stops and tire temperature?
I did my degree in aerospace and aerothermal engineering, and my master's thesis was actually on the DRS. So it was like it had been introduced for 1 full year. The rules around how it was used in the first year, it was like free in qualifying, and then they had like one zone in the race. So people were kind of going like yippee-ki-yay, full Leroy Jenkins in qualifying, and that meant that they were like setting up the car so that it was actually like not that powerful in the race. And so the FIA were like, we need to change these rules. There was also like an incident where like Schumacher's wing, the older Schumacher, his wing got like stuck open in Turkey. So it was kind of, they wanted some ways of looking at how they could introduce more than one zone. Now they kind of trialed it for a year that would give a good balance between enough of advantage but not too much. So that was what my project was. And so initially it was an aero project, but then when I was actually doing it, I was using like a team's strategy simulator. And then like it was like, falling in love with a man through a wall and Love is Blind. That was it. I was like down on one knee after a week. I was obsessed. So like I literally kind of got to kind of stumbled into strategy through that. And I really like poker. I really like kind of the high speed chess element of it. And so then actually ever since then, the racing part of it was my love. And I never actually started in that. I started as a simulator engineer with motion sickness. So I was the only person that got skinny when they moved to Italy because I vomited every day. So that was not a great career move for me. So I was like, had to go for an internal transfer, and then ended up as a strategist internally. But yeah, I was always in love with it. So yeah, I didn't need to do all those aero exams. I did actually get to use it once though. I don't know how long you've been watching Formula One, but at the beginning, like porpoising, Hasn't been in Formula One
Yeah.
since like the 70s. And I, you know, as a strategist, you don't go to a filming day unless like you really want to be on TV, which I don't. So I wasn't at the filming day, but you're kind of like texting and asking people like, oh, how's it going? Blah, 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 you know, because it's not like a Formula One event where you can see the numbers like online. And they're like, oh, the car's like doing this thing and like, you know, really not concerned. I was like, oh my goodness, that is porpoising, because I did my third year degree on it because I was like really excited. So I like went to my like place at home and I had like this project that I'd done on porpoising. So I feel like, I mean, obviously everybody individually was doing this in all these teams, but at the time it was like the filming day. So people hadn't even spoken about it. And I was so excited that I could finally use my aero degree and sound real smart. And I was like, I think it's porpoising. And which was, yeah, at the time, really kind of knew that like we had porpoising back in like 2022 and we brought back the kind of like the ground effect cars. So yeah, I mean, and obviously there was fast master people in aero that also knew that information, and it was just texting my boss whilst the car was still running on track. But that one moment I got to use the degree I spent 4 years and thousands of dollars on, and that was a
when you were like, you know, as a kid, I know that your dad was a big McLaren fan, right?
yeah.
Were you in line with that? Did you like, who were did you have teams that you kind of idolized? Did you like, where did your loyalties lie?
No, I was definitely a McLaren fan. Like I remember there's this like, and it's a shame when you grow up and someone tells you the real answer of it. There's this famous move that like Lewis did, like 3 wide in his GP2 year, and like we were all like, this is it. Like he's like the protege. He's gonna be the one. My dad still is like, oh, I definitely spotted him. I was like, Dad, I think he's been signed to the McLaren program for like the previous 6 years, and they've spent millions of pounds on him. I don't think you spotted him, like in Silverstone in 2006. But yeah, you know, it's. No, it was definitely a McLaren fan. And, you know, we had some dark years, but I'm British, so I'm used to kind of failing at sports, and like every team I love losing. So that's, you know, I think growing up, you know, as an English soccer fan, Premiership is West Ham. So, you know, loss and pain when it comes to sports is no different.
Right.
What was it like as a McLaren fan? Watching that 07 season.
Oh, it's very traumatic. I had to like, I think, you know, Facebook comes up with like 15 years ago today, you said this incredibly embarrassing thing. You're like,
exactly.
oh no, I actually know these people now. Like, can this please not be on any kind of like public profile? Yeah, Ruth took that very, very hard. Like really like really bad. And yeah, it's the Chinese Grand Prix. We're just coming up now to it was the famous gravel track.
Yes,
People watch the race, you never even see where like it was in the bag and then binned it into the gravel trap in China, and then it was like pretty much all over, and then Brazil, and then I watched Brazil 2008 from a hospital, so I was like already. And luckily, I had morphine, so that made that one less traumatic. But yeah, that was a big.
Okay, so you watch 07. You know, Alonso. I'm sure. I'm going to take a guess where you were on the Lewis Alonso side of things at that point. You get to Ferrari. Alonso's there, right?
Yeah. So it took my dad quite a lot to get over that, like that kind of like I didn't actually tell him that it was Ferrari, because like also I kind of ended up at Ferrari accidentally, because I'd wanted to work at McLaren since I was about 10. You know, like everything I'd done was like to be at McLaren, and the only reason I went to the Ferrari interview was to practice for my McLaren interview that was like straight after, and because it was a free trip to Italy, because you know, take a free trip to Italy. And I went there, and I mean, I think part of the reason why I did well in the interview is because I was so relaxed, because obviously I'm not going to go work for Ferrari as a lifelong, you know, like McLaren fan. And they were just, it was just like, it was like going to the Death Star and realizing that they have like really fancy hand soaps, and actually, you know, like there's a lot to be said for like X-wing fighters, and you know, like there's just, do you know what? Maybe the Empire isn't that bad. Like, it's got great dental. It's got great, yeah. I completely fell in love with it. Like the kind of just the warmth. I went to the race bays. It like there's some like magic in the air. Then they took me out for like pizza and carbonara, and like, you know, carbs way to my heart. Followed it up with like an ice cream, and I got to see it. And so I basically was kind of almost ashamed of the fact that I like loved it so much, and then went to McLaren. And this wasn't like cool Lando McLaren, like this was like old grey McLaren. And obviously at the time, in terms of like the number of women around and things like that, it was a lot more, and it just felt a lot less kind of like, it just felt quite soulless compared to how wonderful. And they didn't give me carbs, so you know, that was basically it. So it was an adjustment period, but my dad was like able to support Fernando because he'd practiced that. So he was like, it took him a while to say go Ferrari, this was 2012 was my first season where we nearly won the championship for 5 laps. If it wasn't, it's traumatic again. Then like Lewis left McLaren, so you know, and then now he's just a Ruth fan. But we had an adjustment period basically where I'd buy him merch and he'd hate it, and my mum would make him wear it.
So what would you say if you had to describe the vibe of Ferrari? And as an English person, you know, we have Lewis Hamilton coming to Ferrari. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot more eyes on him than there was you straight out of university. But like, what did Lewis expect?
I mean,
what is the explain? Everyone talks about the culture, but they you've actually been there.
It's just, I mean, it's probably not the right answer to say on a thing about words, but it is something you really can't even put into words. There's just like a magic in the air there. And the fact that, you know, it is their national team, and, you know, you'd win a race. And I was a junior engineer, I was a junior strategist, a car strategist back in the factory. And then like you'd come back from work and people would give you like flowers on the street because you'd like won. And like, I remember going in for the final race of the 2012 season and people like clapping you into work. And, you know, just there's so much history there. There's so much passion there. It really is a family. You know, I obviously left in 2015. And like they still treat you like family now, you know, every single one of like, whenever my successes or stuff like that, you know, you still feel really part of that family. And it is such just a social special place. And all the good thing about sports, you know, in terms of having a team that is like tribal, you know, you feel it there. You got to put Maranello on your bucket list and go there. Because these people that have been, you know, in Formula One for 20 years, they go there. Again, if you like carbs, that's another thing, is Italian food is great. And there's just something special about it. And I'm really excited to see it really, and to see what happens.
So the mystique, so you describe this positive mystique, and I definitely, I'm hearing, and I've heard that, you know, that it's this amazing, incredible place, but, you know, and this is after, I started watching after you left, so I don't take this the wrong way. But Ferrari has been criticized in the 2 or 3 years since I've been watching for having, you know, not always nailing it when it comes to strategy. And I'm wondering if you could speak to, and I've, you know, I can only read about it, but is that comes from like the added pressure? And I've, you know, done a lot of research about Ferrari, and there's always like sometimes these mistakes, they can often come from a pressure, the sort of pressure that comes from being there. And I'm wondering if like, you can, as a strategist that was literally at Ferrari, can you visualize, do you grok that? Do you feel that, like, added, as someone who's been at Ferrari and has now gone to Alfa Romeo, has now gone to Haas, can you feel that extra, you know, weight on you, and how that could maybe impact your decision-making timing, like just that little marginal, is there truth to that?
I'm probably not the best person to do it, because like my reference was that was my home, you know, and that like I was taught again, you know, it was kind of generations before the people that are there now. But I was taught my craft there. So that was my reference for what it is, because, you don't go to race strategy school. So like, I think probably I'm still not a great person to ask, because for me,
Right.
it was my home, and I've compared everything else to Ferrari in the other way. And, there's a lot of other things that are great about Ferrari that other teams struggle with, like, for example, with resources. You never have to worry about, if you have a bad year, that means your team's going to get shut down and everyone's going to lose their jobs if you do a bad strategy. Like, there's different kinds of pressure. And like, I still find in 2016, when I joined Sauber, back then we had 11 teams, and the way that the payment structure worked was that we knew that one of those teams was going to shut its doors at the end of the year. And the pressure to go out as a strategist, and to, like at that time, it was like a really small group because of all the kind of financial difficulties it was there. And like, to kind of go out there every race and know that like it was one set of people is not going to have a job at Christmas. That was a lot more stressful, at least to me, than whether or not I was going to win the championship or not. And I think it just depends on your kind of pressure. So I think, I think it really depends. But also, if you don't enjoy the pressure, which, like, that was my first season as a head of race strategy, so that was a lot. But as I've grown older, if you the pressure is actually the best part of the job. It's like asking like basketball players if they like trying to make like the game-winning shot.
Right.
You like the pressure.
Yeah.
It is the job. Like that's the bit that you do it for, is to be able to sit there and to do.
And I've heard you talk about your mentality, like going into these things. I think I want to stay on Ferrari a little bit, because I guess like we are newer fans, but like, and there is like it's become a joke on the internet that it's like when Charles or Carlos like asks like the pit wall something, they're like checking. And there's kind of a thing where people are like, checking, like, we need answers. Like, we need the answers, like, yesterday. I mean, I think, like, we think of, like, that 2021 Monaco, when Charles had this curse of the Charles in Monaco, and then the rain comes, and then they double stack the pit stop, and then he has the slow pit stop and things like that. I think from our POV, and we're obviously stupid, just let's place that as the base here, that there seems to be, like, sometimes there's a lack
tightness.
of a tightness, or someone maybe. Is there a bureaucracy of like they need to check with a few people, or does the strategist have the ability and the go ahead to like make the quick time decision? We're doing this, do it now. Like now's the time. It seems like, and maybe this might be changing with Fred there at the helm. I think that was part of the thing that they wanted to switch up, but it seemed like there was a bit of like a hesitation with making quick decisions and aggressive decisions at Ferrari. Could you speak to that at all?
I mean, I can only speak to working with Fred, because I did for many years, because he was my team principal at Alfa.
Right.
And I can say that he is somebody that does enable your strategist to make decisions. Like if you get it wrong, you obviously got to sit down and explain it after. But, I can say that if he's taken the way that he was there and put it in Ferrari, then that would make sense, because, he never ever came on the radio in the race to say, stop what you're doing, why are you doing this? Like, for sure you could see if he's getting like happy or sad, but yeah, like it's he was very, very expressive facial impressions, so you didn't actually need to see him like do that. But yeah, no, he never got in the way, which is actually all you really want from a team principal, is that because it's a bit kind of like a military operation, that in that moment they aren't in that chain of command. It's their responsibility to get the right people in place and to get the right processes in place, and then you've got to trust your people to make the decisions. And different teams split it up slightly differently. Some of them have it 100% on your strategist. Some of them you have like a kind of head of track engineering or a director of track, and some of the decisions are split between the two. Most teams work in a way where you say you have your track map, you have like a last cutoff point, which is the last point in which you need to communicate to your race engineer to be able to get the car in, because obviously if the car doesn't come in, that's the worst kind of way of making a decision. And you'll kind of have a point that you say, okay, if let's take a safety car where you have to make a decision, right? So the safety car comes out. If my car is in sector 1, I have to get it checked as a head of strategy, because there's time to it. You check it with your like senior head on the thing. You go, right, okay, I think we should box. Yeah, okay, cool, we box. And then you might set another point. You go, okay, we don't have time to discuss it. for this team, the way we set it up is that like it goes down to the strategist and they make the call. Maybe another team, if you have a more junior head of strategy, you would say, right, no, it goes to somebody else. And I think, as you say, when you have not clear lines of this is the way that the decision is made, and also very clearly these are the timing points we need to make the decision by, is when it starts to go wrong. Or if you suddenly throw like, you know, everyone and their dog putting in an opinion, that's like really bad. Like, you know, when you have kind of, you're trying to make a decision and then you've got other opinions, often for people that, you know, haven't spent their entire lives and weekends looking at it. I when I was there, we had different team principals. So I had Stefano Domenicali was the team principal for the majority of the time that I was there. But yeah, I think Fred is very good at not adding fuel onto the pit wall. Just a lot of there's great eyebrow.
Right. So you would say Fred as your boss at Alfa like really just empowered you to make the call, didn't get in the way.
Yeah, I mean you knew if he was questioning it. So we had a great one in Portimao with Kimi, where we really needed to get like a good start. And of the cars with free choice, so back in those days, the guys at the top 10 would have the tyre that they qualified on, and everyone outside of the top 10, you'd have a free choice. We were the only car to pick the soft, and you get this information.
How does that feel? That you either feel like a genius when that happens or an idiot, right?
See, Matt, you could be a strategist. That's exactly what it feels like. So you only get this information 3 minutes before the green flag, right? So you're running back from the grid, you're sat there, and then because of just the way that the roles work, the race engineers come back last, so they're not there. So I've got like a clean shot straight to Fred. So as I sat there, and he's, again, doesn't say anything, this is a good leader, but just looks at it, points at it, being like, we're the only car of the cars with free choice on soft. And I was like, I'm just not going to make eye contact. I think that's the best thing to do. It's just like, because I could like feel it, and I was like, I'm not going to, like, we're committed. Obviously you can't change the tires now, we're committed. And then it started to like we would call it level 0 rain, like a tiny amount of rain. And actually, because we were on new softs, because we didn't qualify on them, it was like one of the greatest starts of the history of Formula One. Like, obviously, it wasn't just a strategy. Kimi was amazing as well. But the combination of that compound and the way that the weather actually kind of slightly changed made the soft to like medium delta even bigger. And it was like a video game. He was like going thing, and then like I look over at Fred, and he's like looking really happy, like, yeah, smiling now, aren't you? You weren't smiling at me 2 minutes ago.
And how thankful was Kimi to you? Was there any emotion, any thanks?
I mean, he's Kimi, isn't he? He says thank you in his own way.
Yeah. So, yeah, as a strategist, were you pissed when they got rid of like the 11th guy? You know, that extra wrinkle when you qualify 11th, you could choose your own tire compound. Do you hate when they get rid of your toys like that?
No, because that was actually really annoying. Because at the time I was in a kind of not one of the teams that was typically in the top 10. And what you had to do there is often choose between running like a better compound for the race, or sitting it out effectively and then getting yourself done in qualifying. So you would end up with this situation where like if you were knocked out in Q1, you were in a really good spot. If you got through to Q3, you were in a really good spot. But like if you tried to run a medium in Q2 and then failed, it was just really annoying. And then you'd end up P10 and you'd be starting on a really rubbish soft tire, and then the guy in P11 is almost guaranteed to kind of beat you in the race. So like actually I think it was a good change, because it made it just more fair, because there was kind of like it wasn't always just my team. There was times where, you know, you'd beaten people on strategy, but actually you just beaten them because their car was an unfortunate amount of fast in qualifying that then meant that they started in Q3. So I think it was a good rule when it first came in, but then the way that the field spread happened, actually it was quite nice that we have it now. That makes it a little bit different, and you get less as a viewer, I think you get less like kind of silly qualifyings where people are setting really slow laps, like the Chinese Grand Prix. There's like the famous one where like Jenson Button did like a 3-minute lap on primes, because in 2013 the prime only lasted like 3 times the time of the option to be able to start the race on. So it stops like things like that, where you're not actually seeing everybody, go flat out and do everything, which is what you want in qualifying, is to see the drivers go for it really, rather than like, we can leave like the strategy fun for us on Sunday, but like Friday, Saturday with a qualifier, I think you should want to see everyone go as fast as they can.
How much is you mentioned Kimi there, and I remember like looking up. I've watched that start like on the onboard of that start. It was like epic. I mean, it was like unbelievable. I mean, I think like going into a thing in terms of your relationship with Kimi, or your relationship with like any driver. Like in terms of the rapport, in terms of like, we're going to do this, we're going for this, like, are there certain drivers that like want to have more input, less input, just tell me what to do and I'll do it? Like, I think that that's something that we notice a lot of, like drivers that feel like they're contributing more as opposed to just like following orders. Like, no, I want to stay on this strategy, getting in there. Like, where was Kimi? And then other people, I know that Seb was definitely someone who was like more on that level. Like, where of the drivers that you've worked with, like who fit into which category?
I've been lucky enough to work with like some like a wide range of actually really good drivers in terms of that. And you're exactly right there. I mean, you have to remember what makes it great is that they're humans, and the way that they excel and the way that they do well is by playing to their strengths. So certain drivers like to have more information pre-race, certain drivers like to have information in the race, and as you say, kind of, obviously everyone knows Kimi didn't like to have a lot of radio comments in the race, so
right.
It isn't that he didn't have the information, it's just that he would be someone that you would have to provide that information offline before the race, that right. He would go and some people like it presented to them in like a piece of paper that they can read in their room when they're like doing their thing. Other people liked to talk through kind of ideas and to talk about it. Generally as a strategist, it's your job to work that out, how they want information.
Right.
Do they want like reminders? So some drivers, once you've had your briefing, which is typically like 2.5, maybe 3 hours before the race, because then they go off and do all their kind of media stuff and things like that. And the next time you see them is on the grid. Some of them are just like, right, I'm not focused on strategy. I just want to focus on the start. I want to focus on that. And others are like, right, let's go over the plan. So like with Charles, for example, bearing in mind it was his rookie year, we would always go and I'd like go, okay, plan A. And then he'd tell me what plan A is. I'd be plan B. And he'd tell me with that just as like a little reminder. And that was like our kind of thing we do. And then there's other drivers that didn't like to do that and just wanted like a, fist bump or like a how was the laps to grid. And, you really do have to, I mean, that's the joy of it, is that you're trying to get the best out of a person and a car and a position. And that's one of the cool things really, is to play to driver's strength and to know, if you've got a driver that's great at overtaking, or if you've got a guy that's great at tires, actually trying where possible to put them in the position where they can be the most. And we came up with all sorts of fun codes for things to help people remember them and things like that. So
okay, so I'm gonna ask you to put your money where your mouth is. Ruth, if you're a team principal, gardening leaves over, you're team principal of a team, you have to hire your team of strategists, but you can only pick drivers.
Seb.
Who are you hiring?
Seb is such a little strategist.
He's head of strategy. He's head of strategy. Who are
he's
his
head
lieutenants?
Of everything. He's my head of everything. He's like, he's going to be.
Okay.
I would probably have Max in there. Also because Red Bull are really good with tires. So he would know everything that Red Bull did with tires, as well as like, he's like really pedantic about like tire information. So I would have him in there.
Okay.
And then I would, probably have someone like Lando that had like a gaming background as well, because as a strategist you need to be able to type real fast, and like you can't have someone that's like not good at a computer. Like you got to be able to like look through numbers. Like race strategy is kind of like a video game, and like they're both good under pressure. So I would have like Seb for his like mind and his like because he's just like a computer. And then maybe Fernando, because he has an extraordinary ability to like just find like slightly grey loopholes in things. So like if there's a slightly dodgy way, I'm like, you know, but I would probably, I would have him like, you know, sitting at the back, like being like, oh, by the way, you know, you could like box on this lap and this would like screw over this driver, and then leave like Max.
He's like in Jaws.
Yeah, exactly. Leave like Max and Lando to the typing, because like they're the gamers, and so like they would be good at like updating tire curves and like you know, modeling the things. So that's my dream team. Also, then with those 4 drivers out, then whoever I have will win the championship.
Did you? That's great strategy right there. Did you hire away all the best drivers? Did you just describe kind of the division of labor? Because that's another thing I was curious about. Is what do you actually do? I know you guys are like meeting and prepping. Like, okay, like under these scenarios, this is what we're doing. But like game time during the race, what are you guys doing?
So you can
what are you looking at?
Yeah, so you can kind of think of it a bit like an NFL team, in that you've got like different groups. So you've kind of got like, I guess like equivalent of like, you know, your offense, your defense, your special teams. So you've got different groups of people doing different things. So you have and that's like, that would be split into kind of your ultimate kind of full decision making, which is going to be the person that's physically, you know, usually your head of strategy. Some teams split it by car, so they, rather than have like one central decision maker, they operate almost like 2 separate teams, a bit more like IndyCar do. But you would have like your decision maker. Then you have usually people that are updating all the models. So you'll have a guess on how fast you think people are going to be, how the tires are going to behave, like if it's a new track, how like long the pit lane loss is going to be. But then live, you be want to tuning this with data that you actually see, whether that's from your own telemetry, from like your own physical tires when you get them off the car and you're like, oh cool, that could have done another 5 laps, or from what you're seeing in terms of lap times, GPS data from other people to kind of predict. So it's called a race trace, which is basically a picture, a prediction of what like the gaps on track are going to look like, based on how fast the cars are, what the traffic is like, what the overtaking difficulty is like, what the tires are like. So you have people updating that. Then you've also got your like, I guess more like special teams, where you have all your information coming that helps you plan an attack or a defense. So that could be from internal, from your own car. So you'd get information from your tire team that are like tire engineers saying like, you're crazy, Ruth is never going to make that long, or like, yeah, it's fine, or like, you know, we're doing this, like in terms of like, if you want to be able to get to this point, we're going to need to give up more pace, things like that. And then you've got competitor analysis. So we, in Formula One, which I think you can also do as a fan nowadays, we can hear all of the team radios. So that is useful for us to be able to try to beat people or try to understand what they might be doing. For example, quite a lot of the time in the midfield, you'd be listening to what your race leader, so I try not to say Max because it's always Max, but what Max would be doing, because when he pits actually makes a big difference to the traffic patterns and things like blue flag. So actually knowing what other cars are doing helps you plan, or just a car that you're racing. If you're racing someone and you know they need to, you know, save fuel, save tires, if they're feeling sad, like if you're managing to successfully annoy them, you know, like we'll be like, keep doing it, they're getting annoyed, like keep upsetting them. And we get onboard video, so we can physically see things like, for which is a bit more on performance engineering side, but we can see like lines, especially like, you know, in the wet, or if it's a new track, we can be like, oh, you know, like they're going high up in like Zandvoort or things like that. And then you can see things like graining and blistering on the tires actually on the onboard, so you can see the physical state of not just your tires but other people's tires. And teams also have things like fancy cameras and stuff like that. So there's lots of information, and it's kind of akin to an NFL team in that everybody's kind of putting things together, and then you kind of, I'm biased making the strategist the quarterback, but the strategist is the quarterback that is then like, you know. That is then. Okay,
so if F1 is 90% the car and 10% the driver, if you had to amend that, what percentage of it is the strategy?
I mean, it depends how, like formula. If I'm doing like a contract negotiation, it's everything. Like if you want me to give you examples of championships that have been won and lost based upon a strategist. I mean, I think it's a bit like, you know, obviously in terms of raw percentage, the driver is the single biggest percentage performance that you bring as one person to the car. But, you know, I like to think that, you know, we've seen well, we have seen lots of strategies, certainly ruin it. Rarely you can do a good job, but it does come down to kind of being an important part in the cog. But as you say, every little thing can be the weak link, which is what makes it such a great team sport, is that you do actually need every single person. It comes down to the weakest link, doesn't it? Like if the strategy is rubbish, you lose everything for everybody. If the strategy is great, but there's a problem with the car and the car DNFs, or the driver makes a mistake, that's what makes team sports great, is that it does actually come down to everything. And that individual success is one thing, but actually doing something, whether that's building a successful podcast that's now in the charts with your best friends, or whether that's succeeding in a sport together, is a different special thing. And I think that's one of the things we love about sports and team sports.
They're both equally special.
Those are equal. Those are equal things. Wait, so you mentioned that team dynamic. I want to get into your time at Haas, your time with Guenther.
Did you have all of those resources?
I was the strategy department.
Oh, Vankers! This episode is brought to you by BetMGM. As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season, and we'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. For the upcoming races, you can bet on which drivers will be P1 in each free practice. Listen! We know who's going to win the race. It's Max Verstappen unless his tire literally goes up in flames. But guess what? FP1, FP2, FP3. Sometimes Alex Albon's on pole, and we don't know why. But maybe you could, and you could bet on that for every race. You can bet on quali. You can bet on who's going to win. You can bet on the season at large. And if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code DADDY, and you will get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code DADDY, because we're fun, just DADDY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game or race. You can also bet on other things besides F1, but we all know why you're here. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code DADDY when you sign up. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code DADDY and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 for New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 for Massachusetts. 21 and over only. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP for Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF for Iowa. 1-800-981-0023 for Puerto Rico, or visit www.1800gambler.net for West Virginia. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Bonus bets are non-withdrawable. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, North Carolina, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
But that first year, the expectations, were on. People were not expecting anything. And then, you guys finish 8th. In the Constructors' Championship, this new team, I mean, what was what was the whole vibe of that? The image of it in our heads is the ragtag thing. Guenther's putting this, it's by the, he's taping things together, and we're just trying to make this thing work. We're Frankensteining this team. And then there was such great results that year.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot. Putting together a new car, a new team, is a lot of work. And I kind of bearing in mind, I'd been spoiled really by starting in a very big, very well funded team. When I got there and I was where's my second screen? And they're who are you? Get out. You have one screen. Work your screen. Who's this posh girl? And I'm I'm from the East End of London. I'm not posh. I just thought everyone had 2 screens. It was but I think the camaraderie that we had for that first race was so special, and genuinely the race in Australia where we scored points by staying out under that safety car, changing tires under the red flag.
Let's go.
was really special. And like that, you know, it was a real kind of, it felt like almost like being back in time, like the way that like Formula One was. Maybe when you talk about people that are like kind of in their 50s and they're talking about how it was back in the day, like very briefly at the beginning, because, you know, it's such a small team in terms of like the things that we did, and there was so few people right at the very beginning. But you know, it was crazy. Like I mean, I slept on the floor the day before the race, because by the time I finished work, I had like an hour before I had to come back. So I like just slept on all the like the pit stop overalls that all the guys were going to wear the next day, which are brand new. So they were brand new. So they hadn't been opened. Right. I just like, put them out on the floor and just like had a nap, and then like kind of, you know, like Axe body sprayed myself and woke up and did the race. And then, yeah, you know, like saying like that the actual day itself was like, you know, it was my first ever race at track, like my first ever race as a head of race strategy. And then like, you know, I'm there like doing everything on my own. So like if there was a deep end, it was like the Pacific. At that time I was like on the pit wall for the grid, and like, you know, we were using new software, everything was new, you know, and I just couldn't, it wasn't working. And I was like, we nearly didn't have any data for the race. And it's like, you're getting these like countdown, like 10 minutes to go, like 8 minutes to go. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, 'cause I already like look wrong, because I'm like, you know, way younger than the rest of the head of strategy, like very blonde at the time. Like, this is it. This is like, it's over before it's begun. My entire career is over. Like trying to find this bug. And then, you know, the formation lap starts and everyone starts running back. And bearing in mind, we're right at the end of the pit lane, so you can see people on the horizon running back to you. And then it was an aborted start. Thank the Lord. So I got 2 more minutes to find my bug, found the bug, and it all, oh, look at that. Look at that. It's gone.
Look at that.
And that was the exact vibe that you were feeling.
Yep. And yeah, I've been able to do it. And then the guys, because there was so much to do, they hadn't actually had a chance to do pit stop practice at all. Like, because a lot of them were like brand new, it was their first time in Formula One, or like they'd maybe done it like a year before, but like they hadn't done it. And so like that race was a 1/2, and everyone was like, fewer stops, Ruth, fewer stops. And then we had a DNF with one car, Guenther, who had a crash that actually brought out the red flag. And then with Romeo, we changed the tires on the grid. So like on the TV, everyone's chanting no stops, because they didn't actually have to do a pit stop, which was great, because they hadn't actually practiced pit stops at all, because everything was so late to do it. But it was like a real special. It really, like, you know, when you listen to the audio for that, like I you know, we all talk about it. We always like, you know, meet up and say like how special it was, because it really did feel like we'd won the world championship. And obviously we became sixth. And then the next race in Bahrain, actually it was the qualifying rule that we spoke about before. Again, I think because, you know, maybe I just like didn't know how to fear. Like I was like the equivalent of like, you know, like a rookie and in love, you know, so you don't know what to worry about. The kind of, I'd worked out that the soft tires were so soft that we didn't want to go through to the Q3, because at the time it was like the kind of like, it was slightly different, like top 8. And if we saved a new set of tires and did like soft, we'd actually be like really fast in the race, which we did. So like Roman like lifted, we didn't go through to Q3, which meant that we saved the set of tires and we got to start on this like new set of tires. And then we did like an extra stop to other people, and got into P5, which again, that felt like a huge, just like crazy situation. And they forgave me for doing more stops, because they'd had time to do practice at that point. But yeah, it was really special, crazy, but really special, and something I'm very proud that I was part of.
What was Guenther like as a boss? You talked about Fred. What was especially that year, like what was Guenther's vibe? How, you know?
I mean, I think so. Bearing on the timeline of this is 2016. I kind of said, oh, you know, he's like this, and people were like, really? Like, it doesn't seem like that. And then the first series of Netflix came out, and how he is in the first series of Netflix, so many people were like, oh, I remember you saying so. Yeah, basically, I think the first series, the first series of Netflix is a complete accurate representation of, like, you know, it was that was exactly what he was like all the time. So that was like a very loud man. Very different to Fred. In terms of the character. You know, like if you have like the Seb Kimi spectrum. Maybe we could make it like the Guenther Fred spectrum of.
Sure. Yeah. I would imagine though, like, when you're something I think is really interesting within the strategy game of Formula One is the teams that kind of like can take those bigger risks, can take those swings that, like, you know, you're wanting to come in, you're on it's this ragtag thing. Like, how do we make it work? You know, there's been a couple times like when Albon's gone so long on a pair of, on a set of hards that it's kind of thrilling to watch. Like, oh, they're really, the only way we're gonna score points or have a chance at this thing is to throw some type of like Hail Mary type of strategy at it. And I feel like, I would imagine that you were kind of given that, license to do that with Haas. Did that come from Guenther? Was he kind of like make it work and then ran off, to go talk to his sponsor? Like,
specifically at Haas, there was just no time for any. Like, I think. Yeah. That the Haas one was just like, we had to, like, everyone was just running around like that scene in Chicken Run with like just chickens all the time. So like there was no time for anyone to really be like, oh, have you thought about doing this? Because it was just like, I was also the reliability department. So that was like, I was doing wheel mileages as well as being the whole of the strategy department. And I definitely did not do a great job of those wheel mileages at 5 a.m. in the morning. I remember being like, I hope this isn't critical, because I'm sure I'm not doing this well at all, having never been a reliability engineer. Yeah, because the reliability engineer wasn't starting until like a couple of races in. So yeah, no, that one, there was freedom in the chaos, in the lack of time.
Right.
And then, as you say, it really depends on, what is your goal, and having buy-in to do it. And as a strategist, it's your idea to come up with like a menu of options, and then it's the kind of the people that actually own the team, run the team, it's their decision to kind of decide where they want to be on the risk versus reward profile, which depends on a lot of things. Where are you in the championship? What are your chances of succeeding? Is there some extra factors that maybe it's not really on your pay grade to know about, but we can't really look silly today for X, Y, and Z reason. But yeah, it is, if you have the fastest car and you're starting at the front on pole, you'll do, we call it like the deterministic or the free air fastest strategy. Most of the time is the way you do it. If you've got a fast car and you're out of position and it's an easy overtake, you just drive past everybody, doesn't really matter. Or you have to start coming up with ideas. Like the kind of best example at the front is Miami 2023, where Max is starting in P9, Checo is at the front, and then you see he does a reverse strategy, which is like your classic, fast car out of position, because it allows you to use your car pace to be able to kind of get out of the way of other people, even if the race itself is a bit slower on paper, and you paying the price of the start line, it works for you there. And then again, as you say, if you look at that Albon example from 22 in Australia, that was something that they kind of invented in the race because they were planning on pitting, and then the safety car like, okay, we'll stay out and try and get a bit forward. Okay, there's another VSC. Okay, we'll stay out and try and get forward. And then they're like, oh guys, we could actually, really do this. We've got enough ability to be able to kind of keep that time going on. So a lot of them are, sometimes you come up with some wacky strategies. I have come up with some wacky strategies in my time, and then sometimes it's more kind of as you go.
Okay, what's your wackiest strategy that worked, and then what's one that you're like, oh god, what did I do that for? Like, give me the best like Hail Mary strategy that worked out, and then the one that you were like embarrassed about. What are the two?
So like probably the one that I'm most embarrassed about, we'll do that one first, and then we can like spin it with like a positive to go. Amazing. Like nice. Singapore 2017. So it was the first wet race in Singapore, and on paper, just because it's really warm, right? Like, it's like 30 degrees. It's like, and even though it's a night race, it's still really hot. And you think, okay, it's hot. It dries quick, right? Like, it's hot, it's dry, it's going to dry quick. And it wasn't the start tire. So half the cars were starting on the Inters, half the cars were starting on the X-Wets. And back in 2017, kind of, if you were a car towards the back, you wanted to be like, it was just safer to be on the X-Wets because you didn't really have the energy to get the Inters working. They're completely different compounds to the ones we had now. So they were like very similar pace at the start, and then ended up, there was like safety cars. It was the one where there was Max taking out the two Ferraris, or Ferraris taking out Max, depending on the way that you remember it, right at the very beginning. So like the top three was gone. So like if you look at just the positions per lap, it's very undramatic. So we started last and second last because the car was the slowest, and we just stayed last and second last because the car was the slowest for the whole thing. So like if you just look at that, it looks fine. If you look at the race chase, it looks worse because, you know, it was like actually it's not drying that quickly. And we kind of tried to skip a stop by like staying on the X-Wet to try to like skip a stop, because I had this idea from Monaco 2016, which I'd missed because I was on gardening leave, that you could go from X-Wet to slick. And it was the only time it had been done at that point. It was in Monaco. And I was like, maybe it will work in Singapore. It did not work in Singapore. It did not work. So we took a slow car. I took a slow car and I made it glacial. And yeah, we were like, so, I mean, we didn't really see anyone because we were just very, very slow. And it did drive very slowly because it was nighttime, which in hindsight, I should have thought it's not going to dry that fast, even though it's 30 degrees, because the sun isn't there. And then like every single year afterwards, whenever I go back to Singapore, I'd always like put this note in, and people are like, why do you have in the strategy briefing like every year that like, because it doesn't dry quickly because it's at night? I'm like, because I will never forget. But being open, like in Formula One, being open about strategy failures, and then really going and understanding and spending a lot of effort into working out what were the characteristics, you know, bearing in mind this is my like second year of being a head of race strategy. Why did I get it wrong? Why did it work at Monaco? Why didn't it work at Singapore? Help me understand and grow my knowledge, increase my tools. And rather than like running away from these failures, being open and embracing them, especially with people that work for you, one, makes you better, and two, like then got to finally do it in Monaco, and it worked, and we were the only car that went from outside of the points into the points with Valtteri Bottas. So I was like, yes, it does work. And I'd waited like, you know, it was 8 years. I waited 8 years to do that strategy. So just don't do it in Singapore. That would be my TLDR.
That's so fun. That's so like interesting to think about, like that you have like at some point, like I'm going to pull this string, I'm going to do this thing. And then you're waiting for like the time to come. You're waiting for the opportunity to present itself. And then when it finally does, that's such
and people hated me. Because I was always like, it's going to rain in Monaco. And they're like, Ruth, shut up. It's never going to rain in Monaco. Like it rained one time. And I was like, actually it rained in 2008 and it rained in 2016. Obviously I was still at school in 2008. 2016 I was on like gardening leave, so I missed it. But every year I was like so ready, and it was glorious sunshine in that morning. Like people thought I was crazy, but like I know quite a lot of the guys that like live there, and they're like, if there's a cloud above that hill at like 10 a.m., it's going to rain. And so I was like, it's going to rain. It's going to rain. We had like plan A, plan B, and then plan C, which was actually, it was X-Wet to slick from the beginning in the morning. And people they were like, Ruth, it's glorious sunshine. It's not going to rain. And we had like a named plan for it, which normally would be like, you'd have like 3 slicks. And then we're on the grid, and like you have the onboard camera, and like my mother always watches it. She's like, you just stood there like this, like we're doing plan C, because it started raining in the F2 paddock, and we had like spotters in the F2 paddock, which in Monaco is like a couple of kilometers away. And I was like, it's coming, it's gonna be raining, we're gonna do plan C. And then after the race, there's a lot of people that were like, even like big teams that were like, did you know it was going to rain? Like, why? Like, did you just make it up on the spot? Did you do that? And then, like, Valtteri was like, she would not shut up about it raining for, like, the last 8 years. Like, it's just... So, like, we weren't just ready. Like, I literally spent all Thursday, bearing in mind I'm getting, like, sunburn, looking at, like, Fisichella in the wet in, like, 2008, because I was like, yeah... So being obsessed sometimes helps. But yeah, we were the only car that started out the points that ended in the points in Monaco. So failing in Singapore, learning why that didn't work actually means you can do some wacky stuff later. So there you go, full story.
I want to drill into some.
Love it.
So I want to drill into some of these obsessions because I listened to you on another podcast where you're really good at like scouting other drivers, like strengths and weaknesses. And you just gave us a tip of the iceberg. I want to like ask you like some random skills that
Okay,
you
yep.
think other drivers have. Like, who's the best at in laps / out laps?
Historically, it was always Lewis. So, and this
Okay.
comes from
In and out?
yeah. So, I mean, it always used to be him. He always used to be the reference, and that's because in his first year, when it was him and Jensen at McLaren, he was actually like he was faster than Jensen pretty much everywhere, other than through the pit lane. One of my friends was his performance engineer, gave him this report, which obviously this is like, you know, cool. Young Lewis was really annoyed about it, and then he really, really worked on it. And then ever since then, he always used to be in the rank. I mean, this is like knowledge that's in my head, right? That I'm never going to get out. It's like I can give you a ranking of like who takes blue flags the worst, who's the best at pit entry.
Okay. Who takes blue flags the worst? Who takes
Ocon. So sometimes it's just you can't do much about it, but for like across the season, some drivers are good at taking blue flags, i.e. they lose less time for a blue flag and they're smart about where they take them. Sometimes if you get blue flagged and then you can get DRS for the next lap, which is like really good. And it's like I appreciate it's a very unsexy way to make positions, but like positions it doth make.
Right.
So like, especially when you have like a big spread of field and you've got like a track like Austria, for example, where like points positions are lapped. Like Silverstone, we had a year where it was like only the top 3 were on the lead lap. So actually, if you think about, you spend like £2 million on an upgrade package, which is a tenth a lap, you do 50 laps in a race. If you can take 5 blue flags and you lose 6 or 7 tenths less than a teammate that you're racing or a competitor you're racing, that's an upgrade. It's not a cool upgrade.
So Ocon's the worst.
He always used to be, and we always felt like he just like when he was at Manor, he was like comically bad. He was just so polite, you know, because you want to be, you kind of want to be a little bit of a like to quote Guardians of the Galaxy, you kind of want to be like a bit of an a-hole, but not a total dick. So like you kind of need to like lose as minimum. You need to be selfish, but not ruin the race, because then you'll get a penalty, and also no one wants to ruin the racing. So you need to kind of minimize.
Are we talking about the same Esteban Ocon? Are we talking about the same
really
guy?
polite back in Manor day? Yep, really
Polite?
Yeah. He would just be like,
It's just not to his teammates. Not to his teammates.
Or to Max when he's trying to unlap himself. I mean, what?
But no, but that's a good example of how aggressive he was with not losing time on a blue flag. It's because he'd be like, and then you'd make mistakes. Marcus Ericsson, blue flag champion. He's just
Interesting.
one of my best
So
friends.
you watch. He's like the Moneyball guy, like doing the unsexy things right.
Yeah, he's a greatest guy. I mean, also he does the Indy 500 winner, so you know, and like you know, so he's got a lot of good talents. But blue flags does make and you get a thing where like drivers that come from big teams, like Valtteri, for example, hadn't taken a blue flag in years. So like you had to actually, there's very few things he had to practice when he came into like my previous team. But it was like, okay, this is a blue flag. Remember those? Like, we now do this every single week. It is interesting. Yeah.
What other like little things like that do you feel like are like the little intangibles that like as someone in your position you can see like, oh, I like what makes up like the kind of perfect driver that crosses the T's and dots?
I mean,
the
there's so many. When you look at pit stops are a good one, like pit stop positioning, like how they attack the pits, come out of the pits, like just certain, you know, elements of driving. You know, it's kind of, each driver has their certain skills and weaknesses. Like, you know, it is a bit like, Jumanji, you know, when they like do this and then it comes up with like their skills and their weaknesses. Like that is really what it's like in Formula One. And when you can play those strengths well, you know, you have a better chance of like winning the level, basically. And then obviously some drivers.
What's Max's biggest weakness? Like, what does he do the least great?
I mean, it used to be his emotional reactions in the racing. So, you know, like he'd like pump people off kind of thing, which is like fairly typical for a talented younger driver that like they don't know like Marty McFly style, like, you know, they get themselves into fights when they don't need to. And like, actually you saw the second that you had a championship winning car, you don't pick those that, you know, you back out, because across a championship it's way more important, you know. But we have the same evolution with like Senna and Lewis and other people like that. I mean, I think there's very few there's very few obvious negatives, because in order to see a negative, you have to like actually lose. So like maybe when the car's on fire, it's like
Yes, sure.
but yeah, you know, like and you have to actually be like racing them. So like the majority of us only see him when he laps us.
Depressing, no weaknesses, nothing to exploit.
Yeah, we want to ask you some real life questions, but I also I'm curious. We've heard that there's, you know, earlier in the episode you were talking about you're talking about poker, right? Is there? We've heard that that there was a time where you were playing a lot of poker, that you were maybe like getting a little bit too good at it. Can your interest in I mean, like, you know, you have to do gambles on track, and then like, you know.
Yeah, so like quite a lot of the maths of poker is pretty similar to the maths of Formula One strategy. Like and like this isn't like this is like when you play tight, which is basically like playing something close to the mathematically perfect game, and you play a lot of tight poker. If you're playing against a group of, let's say, drunk people in a place, let's call it Vegas, for example, that like, statistically, you do quite well. Like, especially if like, you know, like Ever the Feminist, like you have like a friend with you, for example, that can also, you know, like distract the people. That would also work really well. But yeah, no, so I used to go there so we have a summer shutdown in Formula One, and when I was a graduate, like kind of in order to be able to afford to go on holiday, I used to go to Vegas every year, usually a couple of times a year, and go and play poker, which is actually like why now whenever I go there, like I don't actually really enjoy it because it feels like a job for me. So I like teaching other people how to play it, but like for me it's like I'd like sit down there and be like, you know, stone cold sober all day, and like not really, like, you know, it's like going to the office, but your office is like got an Elvis on the table.
How many hours are we talking about? Like, what were your working hours at the table?
It's Vegas. You don't even remember. Like, yeah, you just do like, I think I kind of like get up, go to the pool, and then you play, because you need to play later in the day because people aren't wasted enough to beat them at the beginning. So like you really like you can really clean up, like, you know, and like I do it kind of like one day on, one day off. So like in order to be able to kind of go out there, but like I did actually meet this wasn't even in the race, this was back in like 2015. I did I'm not going to out the name, but I did actually meet another race strategist there who is now his wife, but on a date with another race strategist. So there is like, yeah, so it's definitely a place that attracts race strategists.
Right. What's your first move in tic-tac-toe?
Do you not see the only way to win is not to play? War games. Don't play tic-tac-toe.
You can win it against stupid people.
Well, you can't, unless the other person's a moron.
You have to go watch a film. It's a good strategy film. Go watch a film called War Games. It's like a really interesting. It's like an 80s film. Great.
Do you have a board game that you enjoy play? Like, are there any like of those games
person
that, like,
to play board games against? I seek no joy in it. I am so competitive. I am like the fun sucker. I do not play board games during Christmas. I am like pretty much banned from like all family events for doing that. Like I don't have an ability to like do it in a fun way, and even if I'm faking it, I fake it really badly. So I'm like, not a board game kind of gal, and every time I do it, it goes really wrong and I get really competitive. Everyone hates me, so best just not to try.
The competitive part of your brain, I think, like, you know, it seems like what I'm hearing from you is that, like, when you see an advantage, when you see, like, I would never think of, like, when I think about, like, me going to play poker, I'm just like, okay, like, want to make sure that, like, I know that, like, how to do, and then you're taking in, well, if you go late, everyone's drunk. If you're there sober, then all of a sudden you have an inherent advantage. I feel like you have a sense of, like, the blue flags, like these, like, if you see an advantage that people aren't looking at, it's hard. It's like an itch that you can't. That like, it's like, oh, well, obviously, what am I going to do? Not do that? Like, in terms of your competitive side of your brain, like, where do you think that comes from? Why are you so competitive?
I think like maybe genetics. Like both my parents. Well, my dad's very competitive and doesn't deal with authority well, so I can just like blame it on like classic millennial white girl daddy issues, can't I?
So it's your parents' fault. Great.
Yes.
Classic.
It is a classic. I mean, it all comes from them. Let's be honest. Should we do? We're gonna ask you some real life strategy questions.
Awesome.
Okay. Do we do laundry at the end of the week, or a few smaller loads during? the
I
week?
go to the gym. Like, I train like every day pretty much. So like, I just make a load of laundry. So like, I have to keep that system rolling. Or like, you're at a race and then you put it in at laundry in the hotel. So yeah, I'm like a just do it so it doesn't like stink out the whole place.
Got it.
Just get it done. Just get it done. Get it done. I think.
Do you buy or lease?
I think it depends on the market, right?
Okay.
So like, and it depends what it is.
These are too sensible, these answers.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably, yeah. I mean, you should buy. There's like this is a really boring answer. There's like a crossover number in terms of housing market price, where statistically, when you take all of the fees, it's across. This is dull, isn't it? You can see now I got bullied. Yeah, I think it's like there is a crossover price. So sorry about that. Go for something else.
Yeah.
Go for another one.
To-do list: hard tasks or easy tasks first?
I think you have to do the hard ones first, because like then you don't have like the emotional, like, because the human brain. I read a lot of books on like sports psychology and things like that, and the way that the human brain puts off tasks is just that it like creates a lot more of a mental toll if you put them off till later, whereas if you tackle hard tasks first.
Interesting.
Yeah, in terms of like the way you're human.
So procrastinating actually, so procrastinating, pushing things off actually requires
Yeah,
effort.
because you're thinking about it and you're like, all the time you're doing the easy tasks rather than being like, I'm actually succeeding. You're like, oh, I've got this thing that I still need to do. So like, that's it's all relative. It's why I always do leg day on races, because then like nothing hurts worse after like Bulgarian squats. Like nothing can kill me after that.
That's just masochism. Anyway, in traffic, do you stay in your lane or do you switch?
I'm a switcher, which is like within the confines of it. But like, I think, yeah, you got to like dip, duck, dive, dodge, all of it, I think. Unless you're like just chilled and you've got like a good,
But does it actually make a difference?
I think in like, I think it depends on the country, doesn't it? I mean, the good thing is a lot of the time when we go to races, we either get convoys, which make you feel really cool, or you get like a fast lane. So yeah, like I think, but definitely, yeah, if you're stuck there, you kind of want to get your like.
Gotcha. Shower in the morning or shower at night?
Like both normally, like. Because you get up, you go to the gym. Okay. Usually I get up and go to the gym and then you shower. And then like
Well, you go to the gym.
We can all go to the gym. Or like I'll go for yeah. And then normally by virtue of working in Formula One, you smell of various car parts by the end of the evening. So you then, because it's actually quite itchy. So when you're sitting on a pit wall, you get a lot of brake dust on you, especially if you're on a pit wall towards the pit exit. So you get like this, like it's like not a good tan, but it's like kind of like really quite itchy brake dust in your skin that like
Interesting.
yeah, it can look a little bit just like dust, but yeah, it's like certainly if you go to like some races where there's like high brake wear, but yeah, you definitely, after being on a pit wall all day or being around Formula One cars, it's a very dusty environment. So I would say like generally always in the morning, mostly in the evening.
There was probably a lot of brake dust in Australia after Max's tire blew up like that. That was
yeah, you can normally smell those DNFs before you
interesting.
Yeah.
Halloween outfit. You go scary, sexy, or funny?
Do you know, this is a really sad answer, but like there's always been like a race across Halloween. So like you never get to do it. We normally do Dios de Muertos, which is in Mexico, because normally it's in Mexico, so you get the kind of All Saints Day. But yeah, no, normally we never get. It's like living. You kind of get cursed to never be able to celebrate it. So I think that's a sad one, isn't it? Pick a different career if you're really into Halloween. Don't work in Formula One. Do like IndyCar because the season's over by then. Would be my strategic recommendation.
I am looking at my crush's Instagram. and I'm scrolling deep into the past.
I've got a good answer for this. I already know the question.
I accidentally like a pic from like 2017. Mm-hmm. What's the strategy? How do I?
So I think you've got like, is it that bad? So you've got two approaches. You either go like, it's fine.
Yes.
Or like, maybe it's good. Maybe you're lonely and you miss her and you want to get back with her. So you either leave it or you just like walk it off, or you go full Q3 and you then like a lot more.
Okay.
Right? And then like post a story.
Oh, okay. You blitz.
You like a lot more, not just theirs. You like other people's, right? You just go around and like a load of things, post like a dumb story, and then like 10 minutes later, be like, ha ha, my friends have had my phone, blah blah blah.
Oh, then you went middle school with it. That's classic.
Wow.
What I did in middle school when I asked a girl out and she was like, no.
Oh, you said it was her friends.
I'd be like, well, Brian took my computer, so joke's on you. Right. I don't want to go out with you either.
Yeah, I think you got to like, but I would probably just not react to it and just like know that like I probably like they're thinking about you now, aren't they? So like either they don't care and they get like enough notifications they haven't seen it, or like maybe you've just like ruined their day because they're now like thinking about it. So I probably would just leave it.
Right.
How long after a first date?
Yeah.
How long after a first date do you text?
I'm immediate. I don't have time. I've never, I mean, obviously I'm retired now because I'm engaged, but yeah, no, I never dealt with any of that, like waiting for 3 days or whatever the rubbish is, because like people have got stuff to do. Like normally I'd be in another country, like 10 hours later. Like, yeah, I don't. I'm
trying to fit you in a window here. I got a short gap.
Yeah, no, I think that's just a bit silly.
Best pictures on a dating profile and disappoint, or worst pictures on a profile and dazzle on first date?
Do you know, I've never ever used a dating app, so I wouldn't, like, I missed the window because they didn't exist in Italy, and then like I just meet people in real life. So like I would have to ask my friends that did use it what was like the better way round, to be fair. But no, I wouldn't know. Right, I would like go ask one of my single friends what worked best for her.
We're out the game, but I think
we're both out the game. We're both out the game too. Okay, you text a friend. You did that. You're talking shit about a friend, and you accidentally text them. How do you, like, you know, because they're on the mind, you text. They just asked all the drivers this. You've accidentally shit talked your friend by accident. How do you?
I think you gotta like just rip the plaster off and be like, clearly, I did that and that was a mistake. But can we talk about why I'm feeling that way?
Okay, yeah.
I think you have. Well, you can't get out of it. So like, I think with that, because if it is a friend that you want to, you know, repair the relationship with, you probably want to like,
sure.
I think just say like, you've made me feel really annoyed, hence why I was bitching about you. Like, can we work it out? Or if it's someone you don't like, just block them. And
or say, my friend got my phone, did this accidental text on purpose.
Talking shit about you.
Okay, what are your workout splits?
So I do like, cardio kind of 5 times a week, and then like strength training usually like 6 times a week. So I'm really into it. But there is actually a strategy reason for this, which is that I did some work with a guy from the SAS, which is like the SEALs for the UK. And when you're under stress, your heart rate goes up by like about 30 BPM. Normally as a human being when you're like stressed in a stressed situation, but all the chemicals that your brain releases, which is your like panic ones, which help you mean that you don't think clearly, they're all based on like absolute thresholds, not roughly speaking. So if you can get your resting heart rate down to like kind of low 40s, that in a race when you're stressed making decisions, you only go to like mid 70s, you can actually think a lot clearer. And it's also something I did to kind of work with my drivers to kind of, you know, we're asking them to do a lot of like kind of, can you do all this training? Like when we go out, like, you know, they have to be surrounded by people eating burgers and like they can't do it. And so I've found that like it's been a really good way for me not only just to have something that's like sporting equivalent to them, so that when I'm asking them to do things, it's a bit like, you know, kind of some camaraderie there, but also like I have my drivers on my Strava, so like they follow me on Strava, so like they can see how I performed in a race, because I feel like if I'm asking them to be calm in a race, they have the right to see how I performed when I'm doing it for them. So, you know, it's nice to be like, Valtteri Bottas liked your Formula One race. But yeah, so I take it really seriously, but also Formula One, we do a lot of traveling, and so it's important to kind of stay fit and to kind of have good like kind of physical reaction to it. And I didn't faint during Qatar, so that was good as well, because there was a lot of fainters there.
Oh, people like on the pit wall.
Yeah, and we have this because you get, you know, like like segments and stuff. Like, because obviously like Max is going to be the fastest like man at the moment, like the fastest female championship is wide open, so like, you know, being the fastest woman around the track of all time, I've got like 7 of the tracks, so that's like, you know, my moment. I can be like, sure, yeah. So no, I do like that, but yeah, and then yeah, strength training is just great for your mind.
Love it. How? Okay, I you know, I think for us newer fans getting into the sport, or just like an average Formula One fan, like on a race weekend, you know, you have so much of this information, but like, what's something that you would give as like a piece of advice, something to look for that can maybe enhance the viewing experience of a Formula One race? Like, when
I think it really depends on the race. Actually, since I've been in gardening leave, I've been trying to like kind of answer that question quite a lot, like kind of on my Instagram, just putting up, okay, so for this race, do you want to be able to like look at what the tire choice is, or you want to have a look at, you know, what the lap times are like, or you want to have a look at the starting tire. And I think that's the thing that, like, you know, going into a specific race, like effectively having like someone that's done it for quite a while to like do the hard work and to say, okay, these are the things that you need to look out for. And again, a bit like we spoke about the drivers, a bit like how drivers have certain strengths. Each of the tracks have like their own unique kind of character. And so like you could like give me a track, any track on the calendar, and I can tell you like these are the things that will make the difference there in terms of strategy. And then as a fan, it's easy to kind of focus on that, rather than, you know, if you have like every single possible element of like kind of weather, overtaking, like car difference, all of this is a bit difficult to kind of know what to look for. But, you know, quite a lot of the time you can follow it from home, you know, and we've had races where, you know, like just the same way that I would explain it to a driver, and I'd be like, okay, so fuel effects are how much quicker you get every lap of fuel. For this race is like 0.06 seconds a lap. And that's the crossover deg. So in the car, if you're going quicker, it's a one stop. Because and in the car, if your lap times are staying the same or getting slower, then you already know, like before me even telling you on the radio, or the race engineer telling you on my behalf, that it's likely to be a 2-stop. So like if you can't hold that lap time, like that could be the crossover. So there's things like that I try find, and another strategist try to find, to make the comms, you know, easier. Like, you know, if you can get to lap 20 on this set of tires, or like if you can overtake this car, if you can clear this car. So we do, part of our job is 50% maths and 50% communication, and clear communication, and trying to find ways of distilling down quite a complex mathematical problem with quite a lot of variables into something like, okay, for this race weekend, all you need to look at is what's the gap between, you know, car A and car B. Is it more than 20 seconds? And then, you know, then we think that this guy will stop again. So I think that's the key, is to kind of like use your expertise to know, you know, I guess that's what sports commentary is, but like to know what are the key things that you as at home as a viewer get to look out for.
Okay, so Miami, this episode's coming out. Miami's is the next race. What do you look for in Miami? What's something that we can be like looking out for in Miami?
So Miami is our third race at Miami, but it's the first time we've got a sprint event, right? So it's a different format for this year. So the 2024 sprint regs are slightly different. So in terms of the sequence of what we have, with the one free practice session like last year, and then we have like a sprint qualifying. So rather than the full qualifying that was on Friday and then the standalone day, you've then got the sprint, and then in the afternoon of the Saturday, like normal, you have the qualifying for the race. And so for this one, actually, probably the free practice is going to be not that representative, because it will be kind of, you know, people are mostly going to be kind of saving tires for later on. But with the sprint qualifying, you'll be able to see ahead in terms of for the cars that get through to SQ3 on the soft, how the soft is going to perform the next day in the full qualifying. And then the sprint race itself, because it's before the race, is actually it's almost like a cheat sheet. You can really see what the tires are going to do for the next day. So actually, as a strategist, normally it's a bit easier because you can actually, rather than just having like 10 laps in FP2, you actually have like a full-blown mini race where you get to run the compounds. And the way that the rules are written at the moment, with only the top 8 getting points in the sprint race, and we've got 5 teams that are clearly out in front, and then the bottom 5 are not. If in the sprint qualifying, let's say I've qualified in my cars and I'm like 15th and 13th, there's a lot of incentivization for me to like split compounds and just run those tires to know what they're going to be like in the race for the next day. So it's one of those ones where actually if you tune in and watch the sprint race and see what the pace is like on the sprint race, it's going to be like a little baby version of the race. And then the other new rule for this year is there's 2 kind of parc fermes. So even if someone's rubbish on tires, or they want to change the setup, or they think the overtaking is different, they can change it again for the Grand Prix qualifying in the evening. So actually, if you watch the sprint race, that'll be a good little baby version of the race itself.
But in the actual sprint race, can you go to sleep as a strategist?
It is. So it's an enormous amount of work that pretty much, okay, so sometimes it can be wet, and sometimes you're kind of just waiting for a safety car, but like kind of after turn 1, once your car's like not crashed, because you normally have to work out if I box at the end of the lap 1 and there's no safety car, i.e. I'm 30 seconds away back, is there even any point me like fitting the tires to rejoin the race, to use another set of tires that I'm going to leave back, and to rejoin the race and to do that? And that could be based on various different elements. And again, the rules used to be the grid for the real race, so everyone was like really incentivized to rejoin and just get anything, because even if you could get 1 or 2 positions, it was worth it. But now it's like only the top 8. But yeah, it's not like the most exciting session of the it's quite relaxing compared to a normal, because normally you've just got a fairly simple safety car decision, which is like, do you stop again or not? And normally there's not a lot of nuance in it. It's normally like, yeah, obviously, or no, you don't need to stop again if there's a safety car. And a lot of that is actually just based on how many tires you have left, because the sprint is worth so much less, especially if you're out of the top 8 cars, that like a lot of it is like you kind of have to not overspend on tires, because you still have, and this year it's even more extreme because you still have qualifying for the race and you still have the race, whereas actually where you can score the points. Right. So a lot of it is like, yeah, it's kind of like, do I want to like spend the tires today when I've still got like tomorrow? Like if it's already going badly for me today, like do I just want to like go around there? And that's why you'll often see cars just kind of like bash around on like a hard at the back just to collect data, because they're like just effectively treating it like a little baby P2 session. So like, I think the kind of the format is more entertaining maybe to watch than it is as a strategist on the pit wall. Obviously if it's wet or there's other things that can make it more exciting, but yeah, normally you're just kind of watching going like, yay or no.
Okay, I make you god of F1. I make you god of F1. What's one thing you want to add? What's something you're adding to a race weekend that can make things more interesting, more exciting? What's something that you want to see be a part of the Formula One weekend?
I would say, this is probably quite a technical answer, the way that the safety car delta works, so when there's like safety car, and they follow a safety car delta now, is like pretty arbitrary. And there's a way that you could change the way that they apply that safety car delta so that when you're actually watching on screen, when people are going through the safety car, it would look basically the same, but you could deliberately set that safety car delta to the crossover of the strategy, i.e. you could make every single race when there was a safety car or VSC always be like really tempting, i.e. it's right on the yes or no, rather than it just arbitrarily being a number, and that number can be something. So make it kind of more difficult, which at the moment is a bit random, but theoretically you could do it.
When you say the safety car
so when
delta,
there's a safety car, the drivers have to, so the best way to think about it is the two of you are driving home from a set place, right? And you get hungry first, and you stop at the services, you get gas, and you get a snack, and that takes you 5 minutes. And Matt carries on whilst you're serving. Now, Matt gets hungry at the next service station, and he stops, but there's traffic around the outside. So now you're stuck in traffic, but whilst he's in the services, you're going slower around the outside when he was going faster because he was on a clear highway. Now you're stuck in traffic. You both stop for the same amount of time. That's why when you stop under a safety car, you lose less. Actually, it takes you the same time to go to the services as normal.
Right.
It's just the guys around the outside are now going slower. So that's why like the safety car loss under a caution period is different. So if you change that, so basically you set the pace of the cars around the outside being really kind of like on the crossover of like, you know, when people go, if there's a safety car, that could push it to a 2-stop. Sometimes it just randomly happens to be like that. You could kind of play around with it a little bit to make it deliberately really right on the cusp. So like it would always be area. Mathematically like a 50-50 call. So every single time there's a safety car, it would put like the strategist into like a real tough decision of like whether they do it or not. Whereas now it's a little bit arbitrary. But I appreciate that's a very nuanced mathematical answer. My second answer would have been Vegas Grand Prix.
But how would you do? How would you do that? Because does that mean that the safety car has to be going faster? Because
No, because the cars follow a fake. There's no safety car, ironically. When they're following the safety car. It's so crazy. The safety car doesn't come out to 2 laps later. So when they say safety car, there isn't actually a safety car on track. Their cars are following a fake delta, basically like a kind of a speed limit. So it's like you know, you're on the highway and then suddenly it says like 50 or something. Even though there's not a policeman driving in front of you at 50, you have to drive at 50. That's what it is. So basically, if you set that to being like, okay, at this track, if we set that speed limit to being like the equivalent of like 40 mile an hour instead of 60 mile an hour, that would suddenly make it like super on the limit between a 2 and a 3 or a 1 and a 2. Something like that would be from a strategic.
I see.
Do you think the safety cars tend to be a little too fast or a little too slow?
The car doesn't really matter because it's random. So like it's just based on like a V car. So V car is just the speed of the cars. It's just based on like on a speed profile. So actually, when you physically catch that safety car, the cars then go about 70% slower than they do normally. And that car is going, so like actually depends which car you get. So like the Aston goes a lot slower than the Merc. So some of the tracks that are like quite high speed. So like that's why when you've caught the safety car, if you pit at that point, it's really bad because you'll always go to the back. And that's also why the rules are different so if you watch Indy and Formula One, it's like the opposite because in IndyCar, you cannot pit until you catch the pack, right? So every time you pit, you're always going to the back pretty much unless you're within like, you know, depending on the thing. Where in Formula One, you get this little advantage bit. And that's why once the leaders caught the safety car, everybody concertina's up, and then you definitely can't pit because you just go straight to the back.
So you would increase that speed limit.
Yeah, increase or decrease depending on the track and what it would take to make it into being like a 1 or a 2. Okay. So like be more deliberate with setting the speed limit so that it is like right on there. But again.
Interesting.
While remaining safe. While remaining safe.
Right. Yes. Yes. I was like, that's the other element of this. Is that, you know, there's a safety element. Yeah.
But I did also say since 2013, I have been asking for a Vegas Grand Prix, but now I've got that, so I had to change my answer because you asked me 2 years ago. So even like I saw Stefano, who was my team principal, and I was like, Vegas, and he's like, yeah, I know, you didn't shut up about Vegas for like since 2013 strategy working group. You wanted one here.
What's if you had to add one more, what would it be?
Long Beach.
Long Beach.
Yeah, we did have a Grand Prix there. Yeah,
you like that track?
And location, you know. So anything that's or like a Bora Bora Grand Prix.
Are you going to be at the poker tables this year in Vegas?
Oh, definitely. Well, I'm not really because I don't really like the poker tables, but you know. I do love Vegas. I can teach you at the poker table.
Okay. Yes. I want to play poker. I want to make some cash this year.
Like in poker, you know, I read this book, I don't know if you know about Anna Konikova. She's like a psychologist writer, and she wrote this book called The Confidence Game, and she just decided to just like pick up poker as a psychologist. And she talked about like how if you're like smart and you went to Stanford like she did, you know, you can learn the math, right? That's if you're good at math, that gets pretty easy. But then the next level to becoming like a pro poker player is learning how to play other people, because all the great poker players know the math. Then it just becomes about like sort of prisoner's dilemma game theory stuff. And I guess, you know, when you're doing F1, you guys all know the math. You guys are all running similar models. At what point does it then become like, what do I think the other guy is going to do?
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, you know, we're all friends, or most of us are all friends. And, you know what people like to do. So just like we know the drivers, like we also know the strategists. And you know, there is quite statistically relevant, i.e. you can see it in the numbers, the fact that like if someone as a strategist has like, let's say, lost a race by being undercut, the next race they're more likely to get overcut, because like they'll have like an anchor bias towards not doing the thing that like or you potentially can get. So you also have to kind of like check your own you know, and that's often why you know, it's not just one person working as a team to kind of disguise that, so that you're not super predictable, so that, you know, you don't always have you know, oh, this is Ruth always does this strategy at this track, you know, trying to make sure that, you know, you use your group of people rather than just one individual, so that you're not like that. But yeah, there is a lot of that in terms of elements. Also with drivers, like if a driver had a really bad experience doing like one compound, like trying to get away from that anchor bias to be like, well, actually, like I know this was rubbish there, but here it would really work, or like actually things have changed a lot, and like, you know, but that's exactly what it is. It's a case of trying to understand, you know, like the people and the maths, and as you say, trying to get the most out of the kind of the package of them. And also, you know, if you know that someone got undercut the previous race and the press made a huge deal out of it, putting them in a position where they feel under pressure, like they're gonna, you know, whether that's with dummy pit stops or being behind them, you know, you're putting the strategist under pressure to do it, and then maybe that's actually what you want them to do, because this race is actually the wrong thing to do, and we need them to pit because actually you think you want to get them out of the way to extend. So there's quite a lot of, like, as you say, kind of prisoner's dilemma and games that you can play if you're within kind of pace to be able to race people.
When
like
do
that.
you do a dummy pit? I love the idea of the dummy pit stop, that it's like a pump fake, that you're doing like a and like how often does that work?
So first off, there are rules on doing it. So you can't like you can't bring people out into the pits unless you have an intent to pit. So technically they're actually illegal, but there is like a gray area. So you can kind of get away with it every now and again. And like, you know, it's, you know, like it's okay. So for example, and also you can always get away with it like lap one, for example, like you can have everybody ready, even if you're not planning on pitting, just because to get people there.
Right.
I'd say it's quite mixed. Like there's a really good example in Monaco where Mercedes dummy pit stopped themselves, which is the example of why not to do it. So they called a dummy pit stop for Nico, and then Lewis saw it thinking that Nico was pitting, but he wasn't. It was actually a dummy pit stop for like the car, I think it was the Rebel at the time that they were racing for the win. And then Lewis was like, well, I'm coming in now. And so he actually like lost positions. So like, it is also possible to like be too smart and to like dummy. And you can do it you can actually do it by radio call as well. So like you'll often hear them say, like maybe you go, okay, if we say come in this lap, that doesn't mean come in this lap, that means just ignore it. And actually, unless you hear like box confirm, that means it. So you can do it in like other ways, and like because there's various things that teams do, like they ask flap angle, for example, just before they're about to pit, they'll like confirm that. So like you could be like, oh, asking the flap angle, like make them get jumpy even if you have no intention of pitting. So you can kind of do it. And also just physically, when your guys run out, right, the tires are getting cold. So if you did it like every lap, the tires are going to fall out of their optimum window. So you can't really just be like wandering around with them, because they're kept in blankets at the moment. And I'm not going to translate that to Fahrenheit. They're warm. They're warmer than a summer's day. And so if they come out, they'll be colder, like New York in winter. So yeah, but it is a cool thing when it does work. to like kind of to dummy someone in. But again, you can look really stupid.
Well, we don't want to waste any more of your time, even though we could just like ask you questions forever.
Yeah, we could. Yeah,
You're gonna get like the poker questions come
So
through.
incredible.
Yeah, this has been so amazing. Thank you so much. Where can people find you, and what kind of stuff can be looking forward to? And
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram at ruthbuscombe.com, and at the moment I say gardening, so I've got plenty of time. So I've been doing kind of strategy rerun, answering all these kind of questions on my Instagram and giving like a bit of an oversight, kind of ahead of every race, and then a bit of a debrief after the race. So if you are interested in race strategy, then maybe there's something interesting there.
Well,
for you.
we start the pod with "Was up, Vankas," which is an ode to your former boss, Guenther Steiner. Can you honor us with a goodbye, Vankas?
Goodbye, Vancars.
Yeah,
Wow, that was amazing.
That was great. Goodbye, Vankas.
Goodbye, Vankas.
I don't care.